About pathophysiology. Stress as a stimulus. Definition of stress. Life events disrupted response that increases the individual's vulnerability to illness, focuses on events rather than reactions or individual differences. Response was developed by Holmes and Ray's 1967. Concepts important to Holmes and Ray's view of stress as a response. Life change, a form of stress related to the development of illness. Life change is measured on the social readjustment rating scale, SRRS. The SRRS is a tool that rank orders life changes and predetermined life changes units for each of these life changes, allowing for no individual perceptions. An individual indicates on the SRRS which life changes and the corresponding life change units she experienced within the last year. After an individual indicates on the SRRS which life changes and corresponding life change units she has experienced within the last year, a cumulative score is determined for him or her. Interpretation of the individual's cumulative score on the SRRS is as follows: 150 to 199 mild stress, 200 to 299 moderate stress, 300 or over severe stress. Stress as a transaction. Stress is a transaction between the person and an event within a certain environment, focuses on individual differences rather than events or reactions. Transactional view developed by Lazar's 1966. Concepts important to Lazar's view of stress as a transaction, demands, and even within the internal and external environment comforting an individual. Primary cognitive appraisal of demands, interpretation of a demands by an individual factors which can influence an individual. Primary cognitive appraisal of a demand, his or her depth of feeling about the event, his or her beliefs about the event, his or her control over the event. Factors which can influence an individual. Primary cognitive appraisal of a demand, unpredictability of the event, uncertainty of the event, timing of the event, duration of the event, ambiguity of the event. Secondary appraisal of demands, assessment by an individual of coping mechanisms available for utilization in adapting to a demand. Reappraisal of demands, re-evaluation by an individual of the efficacy of coping mechanisms utilized to adapt to a demand. Transactional view attempts to answer the following: which factors lead some persons and not others to respond effectively to events within a certain environment? Why some persons differ in their sensitivity and vulnerability to certain type of events in a certain environment? Why some persons are able to adapt over longer periods than others to events within a certain environment? Manifestations of the stress response. Non-specific aspects of the stress response: a pounding, headache, cold moist hands, a stiff neck, and increased incidence of infections. Some system manifestations: muscular skeletal responses, muscle tension reflects the increased activity of the reticular formation, stiffness of the neck, backache, headaches. Autonomic nervous system responses. Fight, flight response, run away or stand up and fight. Effect of sympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system. The most rapid stress response: heart and respiratory rates increased, moist hands and feet, pupils dilate, dry mouth, activity of the GR tract increases. Endocrine response: a wide variety of hormones are highly responsive to stressful situations. Increased production of cortisol, adrenocorticotropic, CACTH, inhibition of growth hormone, inhibition of thyroid hormone to conserve energy during stress, vasopressin, inhibition of sex hormones. Immunologic response: the exact mechanism by which stress produces its effects on the effect on the immune system is unknown and probably varies from person to person, depending on genetic endowment and environmental factors. Much of the literature regarding stress and the immune response focuses causal role of stress in immune-related diseases. It has been suggested that reverse may cure emotional and psychological stress may be a manifestation of alterations in the CNS resulting from the immune response. Negative feedback process. It is a series of actions in which the goal is to counter the influences of an initiating stimulus or disturbance. For instance, blood pressure, acid-base balance, glucose level. Positive feedback perpetuates the chain of events that the system becomes more unbalanced. Must control system of the body achieved through negative feedback. There are some exceptions to this. Blood clotting in human is a positive feedback mechanism. Notice this figure represents stress pathways. The broken line represents negative feedback. Notice the cerebral cortex, thalamus, limbic system, hypothalamus, pituitary gland, and the result is increased attention and arousal alteration in sleep, reticular formation, reticular activating system, muscles speedless and gamma loop, increased muscle tension, immune system, decreased resistance to infection, alteration in immune response, autonomic nervous system, increased heart rate and blood pressure, pupil dilation, dry mouth, increased sweating of the hands, increased coagulability of the blood, adrenal cortex, cortisol, alteration in glucose, fat, protein metabolism, suppression of inflammation, immune response, adaptation. Physiological adaptation involves the ability to maintain the consistency of the internal environment in the face of a wide range of changes in the internal and external environments, include change in structure, function, and behavior. According to Dubos, adaptability is found throughout life, and it is perhaps the one attribute that distinguishes most clearly the world of life from the world of inanimate matter. The higher the organism on the evolutionary scale, the larger its repertoire of adaptive mechanisms and its ability to select and limit aspects of the environment with which it responds. The most fully evolved mechanisms are socially responses through which individuals or groups modify their environment, their habits, or both to achieve a way of life that is suited to their needs. Human beings usually have the alternative mechanisms for adapting and have the ability to control many aspects of their environments. Homeostasis, the concept of a stable internal environment was supported by Walter Cannon, who emphasized that this kind of stability, which he termed homeostasis, was achieved through a system of carefully coordinated physiologic processes that suppose change. These processes were largely autonomic. He emphasized that homeostasis involves not only resistance to external disturbances, but also resistance to disturbance from within. Features of homeostasis: constancy in an open system such as our bodies requires mechanisms that act to maintain this constancy, such as glucose concentration, body temperature were regulated. Steady state conditions require that any tendency toward change be automatically met with factors that resist change. In an increase in blood sugar results in thirst as the body attempts to dilute the concentration of sugar in the extracellular fluid. The regulating system that determines the homeostatic state consists of a number of cooperating mechanisms acting by simultaneously. Blood sugar is regulated by insulin glycogens, and other hormones that control its release from the liver or its uptake by the tissues. Homeostasis does not occur by chance, but is the result of organized self-government. When a factor is known as shift homeostasis in one direction, it is reasonable to accept the existence of mechanisms that have the opposite effect. Control homeostasis control system. A homeostatic control system is a collection of interconnected components that function to keep a physical or chemical parameter of the body relatively constant. Three essential components exist in a control system: sensor, which detects changes in product or function; a comparator, which compares the sensed value with an acceptable range; and effectors, which returns the function or product to the acceptable range. System efficiency. The effectiveness of a system is determined by the amount of change that occurs within the system in response to changes in external chemical or physical parameters.